Hello, my name is Dave Palomar. I would like to offer you a talk that I've given several hundred times. It's called Considerations for Making the Transition. I want to offer you some thoughts as to how you can decide what it is you want to do for a living as you leave in the service, and then some suggestions for you as to how to prepare yourself as a candidate and to network effectively. I served in the Army. I got out as a captain, and I did actually go to graduate school. I've given this talk several hundred times. And the reason I give the talk is because I had such an awful experience in my transition. I actually got an F. I figured it out, and I want to try to tell you what I did so that the things that worked for me can help you. I have been at JP Morgan for 26 years. I think when someone's talking to you, it's very important that you know who that person is. And one thing I'm going to say to you up front is I've had people talk to me, and I've gone to presentations, and I've been spoken to and have received talks from people who are very impressed with themselves. I want to tell you right now, I'm a volunteer. I'm here to help you. This is not about me. This is about you. The advice that I want to give you, people have called me up and told me that this advice helped them find a job, and that is my wish. That is my only objective. So as I was saying, it's very important that you know who's talking to you so you can put their comments into context. My mom, my aunt, and just about every male in my family were in the service. Almost all of them were enlisted. My dad did not graduate high school. He was a New York City subway worker. After the service, he was a delivery boy. And my mother was a secretary in the Empire State Building. They met, they got married 3 weeks later, and they were married 66 years until they're both gone now. When I grew up, I got good grades, but I really wasn't. I really didn't fit into a standard track for the future. Let's say towards a corporate job. I hung around the back of the building with the guys who smoked, but I didn't smoke. I grew up in a working class neighborhood with cops and plumbers. I kind of thought I would be one of those. My mother asked me, would you please go to college? It really wasn't on my mind. I applied to one school. I got in. I served in the service. Honestly, I served loyally. I did my job. But, I'm from an urban area, and it really wasn't, I didn't really enjoy being out in the woods and all that kind of thing. But I did my job. I served loyally as an officer. When I came out, I was helpless. Not helpless like I'm not smart, like helpless, like nobody in my family we didn't have much of a college experience. Uncle Charlie, Uncle Mike, 6th, 8th grade. My dad, 11th grade. I just didn't know where to start. Military people, if you give them the objective, they typically will exceed the objective. How many push-ups do I have to do? Oh, 40. Well, I'm going to do 60. Good. You have to know the objective. I didn't have a map. I just didn't know. I didn't forget the answers. I didn't know the questions. So I actually went into 100% commission, 100% cold call sales, and I thought things were going well. But it just wasn't clicking completely. And I got advice from a friend, and I decided to go to graduate school. I applied for, and I actually went to Columbia. I got my MBA, and I thought, okay, this is going to be, we're on track now. And it's a fine school, and I did all my work, and I did all the activities. But again, I really didn't have a map. I didn't know what job I wanted to do, so I couldn't make a compelling presentation to a prospective employer or to an interviewing person as to why I'd be suitable for that job. Well, I wasn't particularly prepared. Well, I'm a somewhat of a religious guy. The Lord works in mysterious ways. So in my first semester in business school, when you go to business school, you do work on your courses and you try to learn material. But you're also networking and trying to discover, what job you're going to pursue. And I just really didn't have much success in landing an internship. But I meet a fella at a holiday party for veterans, and turns out he knew a guy who worked at a place called Raymond James. Raymond James, if you don't know, is a regional investment bank. JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, these are the majors. They're based in New York City. There are some very significant or substantial regional investment banks in the country. Raymond James is one of them. And I got hired to be the assistant to the CEO. Myself and another MBA, our job was, well, we met Tom James, the CEO of Raymond James, and he said, fellas, welcome for the summer. Here's Jeff. Jeff happened to be a graduate of Wharton. He said, Jeff's going to give you some projects to work on over the summer. But when you're not doing the projects that Jeff gives you, you have free reign of my corporation. So how cool is that? So I got to go sit with everybody at Raymond James, every single area that interested me. And it clicked for me on the trading floor. It made sense. It felt good. I felt good. I just felt at home. How do I find the words? It doesn't matter. It was fit. I come back to business school in my third semester. I put my suit on every day, and I went down and saw people, and I saw alumni. I saw people, any place I can get the name of a person from, and I sat with them. And I'm going to describe with you phase 1, phase 2. I sat with them. I asked questions, and I became smarter. The human brain becomes, you just learn. You learn as you go. I became smarter. At Columbia Business School, we had something called a black box. The black box was a black box, 6 feet by 6 feet, had little slots. You put your resume in there, and the recruiter takes the 250 resumes from that slot, picks 18 of them to interview for the one job that they have. Well, I didn't get a job that summer, but and it wasn't looking like it was going to go much better in the beginning of my third semester. But here I am seeing all these people after school, going down and seeing these people, and before you know it, I meet somebody, and they say, "Hey, you got 20 minutes? You got a few minutes? Hey, Jane, I want you to meet this guy. Hey, John. Hey, Paul." Before you know it, 5, 6, 7 people at JP Morgan liked me, and they sent me up to HR. I got in the back door 26 years ago. Okay. So what I want to tell you is more specifics of the method that I used to get from the low point, really being a very poor, unfocused, not weak, not unqualified, but just not with insufficient direction candidate, and how I figured it out and pressed on. So let me tell you, I like guiding principles. Let me tell you something to think about: your objective, your approach, the method by which you find yourself a job. Well, what's the product? You're the product. So you're a salesperson. You're selling you. Immoral salespeople, okay, try to stuff things and let's put lipstick on this pig and all this kind of thing, and just take it, and just try to shove it. Oh, you want this, they quick talk. Professional salespeople know the product cold. You are the product. They also know their prospect. Their prospect is the company, the employer, the hiring manager of the place they want to work. They know the objective. Your objective in finding a job is to be able, whether this is in an elevator or on the weekend in a social situation, in a networking situation, or in an informal or formal interview, your objective is to define the job. Define the job that you are proposing that you are suitable for. Actually, not suitable, exceptional. Define that job and define the kind of person who succeeds at that job. Then you define yourself. Tell me about yourself is a common interviewing question. It's not a time for you to talk about the home run you hit in 8th grade, although you're allowed. What it is it's a time for you to say, here's who I am. And that's an open book. That's a pen and a paper. That's a piece of canvas and a paintbrush. That's for you to say, here's who I am. And you have the liberty to demonstrate whatever you choose to demonstrate. And then you link who I am with the job you just defined. And again, selling for an unprofessional, immoral salesman is swindling. Selling for a professional is, my goodness, I just defined the requirements. I just defined me. Here's how they match. This is your objective in your job search, okay? So I want to offer you an approach to this, the approach that I've given several hundred times. And by the way, in that we've established that I'm not impressed with myself, I update this talk every single time somebody gives me some input. And I think to myself, That makes sense. So this is fluid. This is not a lecture. Granted, I'm talking to you. I typically give this talk live when I've done it several hundred times, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes in front of a group of people, which I prefer because the questions is more questions and everybody benefits. I am being taped right now. I am trying my best. Maybe if need be, we can figure out a way we can talk or have an email and follow if there's something that has to be done. So here you are. You're either in the service and you're going to ETS, or you've recently got out of the service, or you're a veteran. And by the way, thank you for your service to all of you. Okay, and you're going to sit here and you're going to say, "Let me try to figure out what I want to do." Now, I'm like I told you, I'm a little bit religious, and I do believe you know, and being a good soul and this and that. And I try to give people tidbits of advice. And what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to have you plug your USB cord into me. And I'm trying to download you the experience and the advice I've given over the years. Here's some general thoughts. And here's a general motivation. Okay. So some people, mom and dad, are a professor or a CEO or some other incredibly impressive, accomplished achievement. Maybe you don't have that. Maybe your daddy's a subway worker too who didn't graduate high school. Some people are really, really smart, and they're going to go and get a PhD at MIT, and they're going to be at the top of the class. Maybe you're just a regular person, or maybe you have a hard time and you have to work harder. Those two things you can't control. What you do control is your effort. So you are staring here at the son of a subway worker with a tattoo. And I'm in my 26th year at JP Morgan. I was #1 salesman 9 times. And I'm not impressed with myself. I was #1 because I came in before, I stayed after, and I came in on weekends. And you know, the thing is, then this is something, I actually also teach financial literacy to less advantaged kids. I borrowed all that money to go to Columbia. Now, a net worth, of course, is take your assets, subtract the liabilities, that's how much money you have. I had a negative net worth up until I was 36 years old. That stinks. I worship God. I don't worship money. But that drove me. It drove me so I didn't have to be, well, I was not homeless, although I was poor. I do recall a situation. I was dating a girl, and a couple of people said, "Oh, let's go out for dinner, this and that." I said, "Okay, we can go." And we get there, and everyone's looking at the menu, and I'm thinking, like, okay, how much is iceberg lettuce? And everybody orders what they order, and we got a bottle of wine, this and that. And at the end, everyone says, "Okay, let's chip it in." And we left, and I said to her, "Never again." I mean, I was that poor. And you know, maybe you're 45, and maybe you have a spouse and a couple of kids. But, you know, being 33, 34, living in New York City, and being so poor you can't even go out to dinner with your friends, and you can't pay the rent, or you have a hard time paying the rent. Here's some more perspective for me. So I'm sitting there with my father. I vividly remember 11 years old, 12 years old. My father worked in the subway. He had a second job washing windows because he didn't make enough money in the subway. I remember him on a rainy day, and he looked like he was going to throw up because it was raining and he couldn't go out and earn money washing windows to make the extra money he needed to pay the bills. But my whole life he told me, "Dave, don't ever borrow money. If you do, pay it back early." He just was an uncomplicated man, and he just, you know, character, doing the things that should be done when they should be done without being asked or told to do them. So what I'm saying is, maybe you have connections. I hope you do. Maybe you're really intelligent. I hope you are. You can still do it. You can still do it through effort, through will, through being pure. Don't lie, cheat, and steal. And these are the things we were taught in the service. So let me give you an approach. What you want to do is you have to figure out what job you want to pursue. Now, years ago, there was this book called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" And there's plenty of books like that. And these are the kinds of books that say, let's identify adjectives, characteristics, things about me. Let me research jobs. What kind of people do those jobs? Let me marry those. Well, I think I kind of told you that's your job approach, right? That's your sales approach, and you're for sale. So maybe there's 4 or 5 different things that you might do for a living. Well, we are glass half full. That's excellent, because it means you have 4 or 5 potential opportunities. Maybe through your conversations and your experience and your reading or whatever your life experience is, you say, this is what I want to do. Fine. You need to engage in anything you want to do for a living, whether it's one or four things. You need to engage 20 to 25 people who do that for a living, preferably meeting 3 to 5 of those people. You contact these people, you email them, you call them up, you say, hello, right away. Guess what they're thinking? Can I come, do you want to buy some life insurance, or do you want to buy this property in Florida? Immediately, hello, is there any way I can ask your advice? We're both alumni of whatever. So where do you get these names? You get these names, maybe it's your high school, maybe it's your college if you graduated college, or your graduate school, or any affiliations that you're in, social media, veterans organizations. There's a ton of places where you can get names, and somebody like me, and there's tons of people like me, we put our names on the list when the alumni asks us, will you be contacted? Will you permit students to contact? I say, yes, absolutely. So you source these people. You prefer to meet them at their jobs because you want to see how it feels, how it smells, how it's like. Because there's one thing to read about it or to talk about it. There's another thing to feel it. Okay. Now, what if you go talk to 8 people and you're just like, wow, I met 8 people. They're all really nice, but I don't like that job one bit. Fine. Stand down, adjust, do something different. Okay. So you want to see these people and you want to immerse yourself. You want to say, wow, could I see me being here? At the same time, you're doing what I told you before. Now, I'm not a resume expert, although I've interviewed and hired people, and I have looked at resumes. I'll offer you some brief advice on resumes and on how to present yourself. More succinct is better, but not if you leave out things that matter. Comparative is extremely important. Okay, so maybe you've never worked. Maybe you left the service and you worked for 5 years. So maybe you've never worked. So what you're going to say about yourself is service experiences. I was a really good platoon leader. Okay, that doesn't really help me. Actually, we had 12 platoon leaders in the brigade, and I was ranked 1 or 2 for 4 consecutive rating periods. Okay, that's getting there. I had a budget of $4 million. Okay, I wished I had $4 million in my pocket, but that doesn't help me. There were 7 people in the brigade or in the squadron who had my position. And we all started with $2 million. And we were rated every 3 months over a period of 2 years. I kept getting more and more money under my control because of my competent performance and management of that money. So I ended up managing $4 million. The second person behind me at 2.5, and below everybody else was below 2. That's qualitative. Okay. It doesn't really matter what it is. It was your squad and gunnery competition. Give examples that show what you're trying to show. If there's examples for teamwork, if there's examples for initiative and ingenuity and just figuring things out on the fly, all has to be true. All has to be logical. Try to avoid jargon and slang for civilians. Nobody wants to hear about the DTO and the PPB and all these acronyms, because a person, unfortunately, some people might say, oh, this jarhead person is not going to fit in with my civilian peers with hair down to their, whatever. There's so many things you can't control, that the things you can control that would reduce the number of people who might go for you, try to control those things. Anyway, let me get back on track here. So for anything you want to do for a living, I would engage 20 to 25 people. You can engage more or less, visiting at least 3 to 5 of them, and you contact them through these sources. And you say, may I ask your advice? I've been out of the service 2 years, or I'm getting out of the service in 2 months. I'm interested in doing such and such. Is there any way I could meet with you or talk to you for 20 minutes and ask you some questions? Well, what's going to happen is, in the beginning, phase 1, phase 2, Palomar, phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1, you unavoidably are asking, well, not dummy questions, but you kind of unavoidably don't know what you're talking about. What happened to me back in 1990, 1991, I just got smarter. I'm not that smart. I started to ask better questions and have better answers, and I was clearly, instead of like like that, looking around. I was clearly more aware and more competent, such that I was attractive and appealing to people, versus in the beginning, oh, that's some, intern or trainee guy coming in to, or a prospective candidate. I started to, like, I looked like I belonged there. And that just kind of happens. Guess what? There's 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. You want to go out and get a glass of wine or a glass of beer, or go to the ball game, God bless you, do that. I was so poor. I was possessed with getting a job. And I don't read that fast. I read every darn book I could get my hands on. Everybody you see, ask their advice ask their advice. Maybe in the beginning, you're kind of like, can you advise me as to how I can learn more about this? If you're in a job interview, that's not what you want to ask, because you're supposed to be fluent, or it's supposed to be able to identify the job, like I told you. Ask everybody's advice. Get books to read. I personally made that my consuming effort. I slept. I like to exercise. I ate my meals. But besides that, I kind of was possessed with getting a job. Okay. By the way, if you intend to work in finance, financial services, any of these sorts of things, you are out of your mind if you don't read the Wall Street Journal 6 days a week. Wall Street Journal comes out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday through Saturday. It's not open for discussion. You have to be fluent on the content of the Wall Street Journal. If you're going to go into the investment business, you have to be fluent on Barron's. Barron's comes out every Saturday morning. I think it's $5 or $6 hard copy. I think you can get it online for like $1 a week or something like that. You just have to do it. You have to read books. Okay. So I told you to meet these people, and I caution you about something that I call idle, insincere chatter. I'm not that kind of guy who says, how was your weekend and how you doing and what do you think of the Giants? They really stink, don't they? You can talk about that stuff. And if the person you're going to go see is talking sports and this and that, okay, you can't be rude. But this happens in business too. Guess what? When you go see a customer and you're trying to do some business, they might be trying to stall. Or maybe the person was kind of nice and they said they want to see you, but they really don't want to see you. If they're talking sports and talking weather, politely take control of the situation and turn it to the material. Again, in the beginning, phase one, you don't even know what to ask. Phase two, you're kind of like armed and dangerous. You're sitting on a trading floor with somebody. You said, wow, the price of oil just moved up or down. Treasury prices went up or down. That's not intuitive to me. I thought they would have gone up. Instead, they went down or something like that. Try to avoid the how was your weekend and sports kind of thing. Show the person, I'm going to use a bad word, prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Now, we learned that in the service. If you're going to go see somebody, you research them on any way you can. Social media, any kind of research. Research the company, research the job. I told you already, I like guidelines. I like maps. I'm a map guy. Here's Palomar's map as to what you want to think about from a template point of view as you pursue job A, B, or C. And you might dismiss job A, but if you have any of 3 different things you might do for a living, I give you 4 points of orientation. The one is you want to know the major categories of jobs in that area and the characteristics of those jobs. If you were going to go to a fixed income trading floor and do bonds like I did for all those years, we have sales, trading, research, and syndicate. We have a lot of jobs, but those are kind of the 4 categories of jobs that we have. Number 2, everybody talks to clients in business, no matter what they do, whether they're in marketing, selling stocks or medical stuff or business or investments. What are the kinds of clients who they speak with, the categories and the characteristics of those clients? Okay. Number 3, the acronyms, the slang, the abbreviations that the people in that area use. Just like when you were in the service, whether you came out of basic or came out of officer school, you're a new sergeant, go down to the motor pool, go to BMO and do the DD, whatever. Like, what are you talking about? You're outside until you're inside. Well, guess how you know that stuff? You know that stuff from reading books, from talking to people, being a sponge. See, because you weren't here when LTCM had a big problem in 1998. But if you're going to be in the investment business, you need to know what that is. If I say to you, how much is a tick worth in a bond? It's like, what are you talking about? Well, a tick, 1/32, and 1 point is $10,000. So 1/32, excuse me, 1 point is $1 million. So one tick is $10,000, right? That's not an impressive amount of knowledge. That's just the language on a trading floor. So phase one, phase two, 24/7. Maybe you have 5 kids and you're allowed to have that. Maybe you're in a rush to get a job. You can drink out of the fire hose as much water as you want. The more books you have, the more people you talk to. I had a guy call me up one time, and I think I told you, I actually teach financial literacy to less advantaged kids. I'm not a handout guy. It takes the money. Go do something with it. I'm a teach a man or teach a woman to fish guy. So when someone calls me up, oh, hey, Dave, how are you? I got out of service. Can you get me a job? Can I send you my resume? Don't ever do that. That's insulting to the person who you spoke with, because allow them to evaluate you, because maybe you're not ready or maybe you're not qualified for that job. So be careful about how forcefully you put your resume in front of somebody, even when you meet them, but have it with you in case they ask you for a resume. So, I'm not a big handout guy. I'm not inclined to say, oh, hi, here's some money, or here's the answers. But if you show me you've done work, I will help you as best as I can. If you put forth the effort, I will, and you want to learn how to fish, I will try to teach you how to fish. So I had a fellow call me up one time, and he said to me, and I think I was mentioning something about resumes, let somebody have an opinion on you, and they're probably going to ask you for a resume. Or if in the discussion you feel it's going well, and maybe during or at the end, if you feel it's going well, may I give you my resume just so you can, for memories of me, or if you feel it's worth passing it to somebody. Okay. So I had this guy call me up, and he was interested in doing what I did for a living, being a bond salesman. And he knew some stuff, but not everything. But he knew enough that I was willing to offer him some advice. But I did not offer him to come in and meet people because he wasn't ready. But I told him, these are some of the things you should be conversant about and the kinds of questions you should be able to answer. And this is the kind of stuff you should know, and you should read the journal. That guy called me back 3 weeks later. It's as if it was 3 years later. He must not have slept. He was so damn impressive. I said, why don't you come on in? I said, I'm going to introduce you to a few people. Well, it's a flashback to my experience, because the people who we met liked him. They said, you got a few minutes? And they introduced some other people. We hired him. Guy got hired out of the blue, and he did it on his own. So I think I was going through the points of orientation, and I think I was saying to you how you get those. And I just told you don't use military lingo, but if civilians talking lingo, you want to understand what you're talking about. And I told you before, define the job, define you, and go like this. Well, how do you think you define the job? You define the job because you're focused on these 4 points of orientation, and you're asking these questions, which I'm going to give you the 3 questions. I'm going to give you some questions to ask people. So the 4th point of orientation is current events, especially how it applies to the job of the person is you're going to see. My goodness. Imagine if there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that morning about like rubber prices or something that affected tires, and you were going to go see somebody who was an auto banker, and you hadn't read that article. Create conditions under which something good can happen. There's no substitute for preparation. My dad, who's gone, wonderful man that he is, when I borrowed all that money, and I never told him how much I borrowed, he would have had a heart attack. This is a man who was in the subway. He didn't make that much money. I borrowed so much money, I had loan sharks looking for me. I told you I had a negative net worth until I was 36. He said, Dave, what are you doing? I said, Dad, I'm trying to get myself a situation in corporate America. Dave, we're not like that. We're always going to be the guy like parking the car. And he didn't have like a low opinion of himself, but he was a working guy, and he was a son of immigrants. They immigrated from Eastern Europe. And he just didn't think like that. He didn't think that Dave was going to be sitting here on Park Avenue and JP Morgan 26 years later. But I said, Dad, I'm trying to create conditions under which something good might happen. I can't control what's going to happen, but maybe I'll make it, maybe I won't. But I'm going to fight, and I'm going to prepare, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to do everything I can control, and we'll see what happens. So I made myself appealing, let's just say. So the fourth point of orientation is current events, especially how it applies to that person you're seeing. So I told you to see 20, 25 people of people in the business, in every business you're interested in. Maybe you're interested in one, maybe you're interested in three, maybe you're interested in one, but it becomes futile, so you have to change gears. Any business you're pursuing, shoot for 20, 25 people, trying to meet 3 to 5 of them. I'll give you 3 safe questions. Can you tell me your career trajectory, like what your history has been? Now, maybe someone's going to say to you, why do you want to know that? Oh, I actually ask that of everybody I see. It's useful for me to compare and contrast. Does anybody like me? Nobody like me. It's useful. Here's the one with the asterisks is all over it, and it's italicized. Can you tell me about your average day? Okay. So I told you in the beginning, define the job, define you. Imagine you're interested in job A, and you ask 15 people what their average day is like. Don't you think you're going to be pretty equipped to describe like what that job is that you're looking for? And by the way, of the 15, maybe 10 will be, wow, he or she is really amazing. The other 2, they're fine. The other 3, wow, I'm kind of surprised they have the job. But so you'll have a sense as to what characteristics of that job, the kinds of people who are successful at it. Number 3, can you tell me what you like and dislike about your job? Kind of obvious. Maybe it'll come out in question 2, but I'd want to know it. It would really stink if 8 people, here's something that happens in business. Some jobs, and I have a friend who retired as a full colonel. Some jobs, a lot of entertaining. Maybe even a little nose rubbing, or, there's different, on the spectrum of that, there's different degrees. If you're not that kind of guy or girl, you'd have to know if that's a major portion of the job, or things like travel, or things like hours. But I think that's a whole separate discussion. I don't think in the preliminary you want to, oh, well, I'm a 40-hour week kind of guy. Don't do that. But try to glean as much as you can about the characteristics of the job. And later on, before you accept the job, you certainly do want to know, how am I evaluated? How am I evaluated for basis of promotion, for basis of bonus, or for pay advancement? What's kind of like the context of ours? Is it a family-friendly place? If that's important to you, that sort of thing. So again, I'm looking to my left here because I have some notes jotted. So I told you to read the journal, read Barron's, read books, ask people for their advice, and especially more in phase 1, phase 2, because when you're actually going in for an interview, you probably want a little bit less so to ask people their advice, because the premise is that you're armed and dangerous and fully qualified. Okay. So, and again, we go back to define the job, define you, go like that. Okay. Create conditions under which good things become possible. Sometimes people say to me, I'm like you, Dad, Uncle Mike, Uncle Charlie, factory guys. I don't know what to do. I've read books, I've talked to guys and girls. What happens if that first job is no good? And I don't care for it. Okay, that's fair. Excuse me for a second. You don't control some things. You do control other things. I'll give you some advice. If you're in that job, I suggest that you work to be the best person in the history of time, whoever had that job. Because what happens is managers in companies, they talk and needs arise. The bigger the company, the more the needs. Maybe it's in your location, maybe it's someplace else in the country, a different division, and they think, wow, we've interviewed 6 guys or 6 girls. We can't find anybody for this job. Oh, wow, I got this guy, John, or this woman, Jane, who I brought out of service 8 months ago. And, they've only been there 8 months. Man, they are a fireball. Create conditions under which something good can happen. Or the manager hears about something, or you read because you're always reading, you're always scouring. I have my eyes on screens. I read news sources. I read magazines. I read everything I can, even peripherally, just skimming it, just so I can have my toe in the water. What if you hear about a training course, or what if you hear about the company allows people to go to graduate school? But getting back to the job, if you don't like the job, you don't want to look for another job within that company. There's no rule, but after 6 months, somebody gave you a shot. Well, first of all, just to be civilized, there's people behind you coming out of the service. And the last thing you want is you work there 6 months and you change jobs, and the manager who hired you goes, what? Yeah, do you owe the people behind you? I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But on your own reputation, you want to be the person who fulfills your obligation. So go there, do the best job. Maybe it's a year and a half, maybe it's 2 years, and maybe you can peek around for someone else. By the way, if you're doing a great job, people are going to be talking about you, and they're not going to be saying bad things. They're going to be saying good things. Create conditions under which something good can happen. And a colonel told me this in 1979. He spoke to a couple hundred of us. Goes, doing the things that should be done when they should be done without being asked or told to do them. If you follow these basic rules, because I'm a basic guy, I'm a ham and egg here, good stuff happens. I told you I was number one 9 times. I don't have good jokes. I'm not I'm not a fancy guy. I'm a grinder. You can make it work. Okay. So I gave you the 3 questions. I suggested that you avoid idle, insincere chatter. Oh, by the way, when you get into your work and into your project, some people spend their work career, and maybe you're in a morning meeting and the manager has a task to give out. People are like, oh, not me. Maybe you can grab that task, not the brown nose the manager, but because you're going to learn. Being political, being insincere is awful. Being can do and being a positive citizen and contributing, as long as it's sincere, is the kind of thing that helps you, helps the company, and it could come back to you in good ways. Have a relentless attitude. Rudy does not get fired. Rudy is the movie about the guy from Notre Dame who was like 5 feet, whatever, and he played under him. Okay, so I'm looking through here. I got my 4 points of orientation. Let me offer you some attributes as a veteran that you can focus on and take advantage of. And then I'm going to offer you some things where people trip up. Okay, your attributes. No matter what your branch, no matter what your rank, you come in as a trainee, you go to be E1, you're a Navy SEAL, you're a Marine, you're a transportation sergeant, you're a supply officer, whatever you are. From day one, we have an upbeat, can-do team attitude. And I'm looking at a note here that I wrote myself about smiling. So close your eyes for a second. Hi, how are you? My name is Dave. Hi, how are you? My name is Dave. So I live in New York City. I can walk into a pizza parlor. Yeah, what do you want? I think I want to leave. I can walk into the next pizza parlor. Hi, how are you? How may I help you? You know what I mean? Don't walk around like this, all dancey, singy, but nobody wants to hang around with or be associated with a droopy kind of person. Nobody wants to be like, hi, I never once had a pimple as a teenager. No, nobody wants to be around those people either. I mean, it's like be part. Oh man, this stinks. Oh, it's rain. Oh, it's Monday. I hate Mondays. Just be a little, in the service, we learned this, right? If you're in charge of people, you're an NCO, you're an officer, you're not authorized to have a bad day. At least I wasn't, no matter what. I mean, I'm living like a dog, and I'm kind of from the city, and I'm out in the woods, and people are like, oh, this is great, we're out camping. Like, kill me anytime. But I never had that. I never said that. I felt that. But, will yourself to do what you did in the service, to lead people, to show that positive attitude, upbeat, can do. And when you're talking to people, you're on the phone, smile because your voice sounds different. We, all of us, are unflappable under conditions of stress. We are trained to multitask. In my job, where I was pretty successful, guys were tougher than me, guys were smarter than me. I simply outworked them. And I told you about the smiling. In the old days, we didn't have cell phones. I know some of the younger people don't really understand that. people would call in on the phone, and people would jump on the phone. My wife would call in. I'd pick the phone up. Hi, Dave Morgan, how can I help you? She goes, oh, you're having a great day. I go, no, I actually want to kill myself. She goes, but you sound great. I go, right. I always answer the phone like I'm happy. I always talk to people like I'm happy. I always project happiness. Even if I feel like screaming, I find a black room, a dark room where no one's around, and I scream, and I go back out. And it's not insincere, but like you will yourself to be positive like we are. We are honest. We are team oriented. We are literal. We are trained to be prepared. So I was a manager for a while, and one or two people said to me, geez, it's so frustrating with you. There's no gray area. And I said, right. Isn't that awesome? There's no ambiguity. It's either black or white. It's either one or two. People feel very comfortable talking to you because there's no political agenda. You laugh at his jokes, but you don't laugh at her jokes. No, we're straight down the middle. We're trained to do that. Well, let's switch to what a negative can be. Some people, and I live in Manhattan. I'm very, very pro-diversity, pro-international, pro-everything. I speak some Mandarin Chinese. I speak some Spanish. I stink at both, but I'm trying very hard to continue to learn them both. I love being in a situation with people speaking different languages and tall, short, different colors, like whatever. I love that. 2018, some people are not like that. It's unfortunate. You could see my hair. It's not a what do you call going bald. I could have Mick Jagger hair if I wanted. I cut it like this. I might not have it like this if I was interviewing, because people look at me and you don't know what I look like standing up, and they presume to categorize me. They know exactly what I think politically and what I think about this and that. They don't know a darn thing about me. 2018, people still make judgments. So sometimes people give the handshake. And depending on how macho your branch was or how macho you are, whether you're a man or woman, some people give the handbrake or handshake. Don't do that. We had a guy on the floor, and he actually did that to people. And a couple of people even said something to me, but I said something to him. I said, you can't do that. He was a big, strong guy, lifted weights. I go, that's not macho. That's like, you're not even going to get in the door. He happened to be an intern. I don't think the guy got offered back a full job. There was another time a guy calls me up, and he was like the guy who called me, who 3 weeks later came back and was very prepared. And he was in graduate school at Yale, and he was pretty sharp. So I brought him in to interview for a job as a trader. And he met 5, 6, 7 traders. And at the end of the day, I said to the head trader, who liked me a lot, and I made him a ton of money. He loved me. And I said, Lou, how did he do? He goes, I'm not going to hire him. Well, what happened? Well, this guy was sort of muscular, and he happened to be a martial artist. And he says, I'm afraid if he lost his cool, he would kill somebody. That's the words out of the head trader. Now, maybe he's accustomed to walking around and bowing his back and flexing his chest. I don't know. I wasn't there, and it doesn't matter. The point is, go right down the middle of the fairway. Don't go left, don't go right, because you never know who you're dealing with. Guess what? Many, many years ago when I was interviewing, a person says to me in an interview, oh, you're a soldier. So what do y'all do? Like on the weekend, you go around with your plastic guns and go bang, bang in the woods and chase each other around? At the time, I thought it was one of those pressure questions, because occasionally you'll hear about a pressure question in an interview, try to trip you up. I later learned the person was a screaming, hate military people and this and that. It happens. Now, these days, I think many people are very pro-military, and the ones who aren't wouldn't say so. That's the good news. The bad news is that I guess I'm getting a little off track. The bad news is there's lots of people who have served overseas in combat who are coming out. Supply and demand. More acceptance of military people. Many companies like JP Morgan wants military people, not tolerates, wants. We seek military people, but there's a lot more people trying to apply, which is why you have to go define your job, define you, and you have to plan. But getting back to the downfalls. So you have to be aware of how you dress, and no high water trowel for the guys, or socks that are dripping down, or We used to call them Hershey bar shoes. You know, look like you're playing soccer with bricks. I mean, shine your shoes. Your hair, that's a personal decision. But there are some people, well, people look at me every day and they presume to know everything about me. They don't know a damn thing about me, but people judge you. Okay. Once had a guy say that we hired a Navy SEAL. And this guy on the desk who was that kind of guy says, I thought you said he was a Navy SEAL. I could kick his butt. I said, I assure you, he could kill you and anyone in your family. He said, well, he's so wimpy. I don't know what the guy's name was, John, actually. I don't know what he did when he interacted with this trader. But whatever he did, he was overly deferential. Now, we're trained to be deferential. Once had a person say to me that Air Force pilot was kind of wimpy. I think the Air Force pilot had pretty straight nerves flying over enemy, territory. Just being respectful is one thing. Being completely and excessively deferential and sir and ma'am and this and that, you got to be conscious of it. I don't know the answers. I'm just telling you, be conscious of it. Here's one. People say, oh, you're a military guy. Used to people calling you sir and do this. Yes, ma'am, do this. You can't think outside of a rigid organizational chart. That's the only way you can do it. I can appreciate that you have that perception. It's actually hasn't been like that, for a while. I just want to offer you the way the service is now is leaders, and we're all taught to lead from the day we're E1s or O whatever's, is to generate, to inspire people, to generate buy-in. There'll be one or two detractors, but you're trying to generate positive momentum within the group and buy-in, and it's a participatory thing. And the American military, we're taught that from day one. We're taught to know the job of the person above us, below us, to the left, to the right. It's a team. And we're taught to move it forward and to think outside the box towards the objective without constraints on the solution. So we're trained to inspire people, to motivate people, not to give orders and it's also the military, is the ultimate diversity and multi-pod experiment of all time, and it's utterly successful. So it's difficult to try to rebut somebody without insulting them, but be prepared for that possibility where someone's going to say you're used to giving orders and you can only work inside a box. One thing I notice here, and I'm almost done, by the way, for timing purposes. One time I was a panelist, and the people said, or the person asked a question, in my resume, should I indicate that I'm a National Guard or a reservist? And one of the panelists said, I wouldn't do that. It's just like a woman. Does she indicate she's pregnant? Legally, she can't be discriminated against, but many companies would do that. And I said, I respect your answer. I'd like to offer a different point of view. Now, granted, I have a job, and if you're applying for a job, you don't. But another train of thought is, if you're doing that, maybe you're doing it for money, but maybe you're doing it because it's important to you. Maybe you want to stay involved in the service. If that's the kind of thing that's going to turn off an employer, I'd kind of want to know that going in, if that's important to me. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just giving you something to think about. Now, here's another thing that we found out from hiring people. Some military people are screaming successes, fantastic, and get more like him or her. Other people, they found that at the 2-year point, 2.5-year point, they seem to kind of get bored and they don't have the same inspiration. And well, guess what? In the service, we have jobs and they change our job every year, year and a half, 2 years, sometimes 2.5 years. That's how it was when I was in. I don't know if it's any different now. Well, you got to think about that. You got to think about, are you the kind of person who can do what I did? I had the exact same job for 24 years. Looking back, I was burnt out, but I did run through the tape. Maybe you're the kind of person that you've had an 8-year career and you're just really accustomed to changing that jobs every 1.5 years. I'm not telling you the solution. I'm just saying to be conscious of it. Here is my last page of notes. I'm going to offer you some general career advice. We are never insincere or brown-nosed, but say nice things about people. There's no advantage to he or she's a jerk or an idiot, or, don't be that person who always has an opinion or is always judgmental. Education. Get as much as you can. Uh, I still read things to try to educate me in my job. And by the way, I'm getting near the end, not next year, but it's not real far away. And I'm still trying to improve myself. Not because someone said I stink, and not because I wake up in the morning and I say in the mirror, you stink. I just want to be better. When I walk out of the room, whether they like me or not, I'm not particularly interested in if they do or don't, but I want them to say, well, that guy knows his stuff. Does not lie, cheat, and steal. His word is gold, and he knows his stuff. So get some education. Maybe if you're not finished with college, get it. If you don't have graduate school, maybe get it. Maybe see if the employer has those kinds of things. You can read that stuff online. You don't have to ask that question. Get certifications. Maybe a language or whatever. In addition, when you go into school, go to the best school you can go to. They teach the same stuff at Harvard that they teach at Swollen River in western Montana. No offense to Montana. I'm sure it's a great place, and I'm not sure if there's a school that's named that, but there might be. They teach the same stuff. They use the same case studies, but the people from one school kind of go to a different path than the people from the other school. You want to be around the best people that you can, because you pick up more from them, or you can say, wow, look at him or her. I do not want to be like that, or I do want to be like that, or that was a pretty good idea. To the degree that you can. Oh, another thing is read. I don't read that quickly, but I still read. I read classics from time to time because they're so well written that whether or not they interest me, they improve me. Inside this head, I'm just trying to load up the hard drive. And it's good. I happen to like to read FBI and Secret Service books, but I also read business books. I think I've read every sales book that's ever been written because I've been selling for 27 years. Every single doggone book, I got something out of. Every single one. I'll give you an example. There's an author called Tom Hopkins. Tom Hopkins wrote a bunch of books. Now, I'm dating myself, but I'm 57, so who cares? One of the books is How to Master the Art of Selling. Tom Hopkins goes through what he calls a porcupine close. Well, I worked on a bond desk selling bonds. So it kind of goes like this. Person calls you up. Oh, do you have red chairs for sale? Yes, I do. Thank you. Click. The professional salesperson, the client calls up and says, oh, do you have red chairs for sale? Well, I think I do, but can you tell me the characteristics of what you're looking for? And then I'll get the price for you, or I'll verify we have red chairs, but maybe I can come back and give you some alternatives that might meet your criteria, but be, more affordable for you, or offer you additional characteristics. Well, now I'm on a bond desk. Person calls up and says, oh, hi, can you offer me the Johnson & Johnson 3.5% in 2024? The idiot says, yes, they're offered here. Oh, thank you, bye. And they're going to call 5 other places, whatever. The professional says, like I was describing with the chair, I think we have those, but can I just ask you, on the Johnson & Johnson 3.5 to 24, is it the coupon? Is it the maturity? Is it the sector? Is it the rating? Is it the deal size of that particular bond? Because if I know what's important to you, I'll get the price for what you asked for. But I might be able to come back and show you an alternative that meets all of your criteria, but is less expensive or has additional advantages. Because in selling, what you're trying to identify is what he or she is looking for. You're being truthful with what you have. And by the way, these days, you can actually go to jail if you try to sell somebody something that doesn't meet their criteria and it's not suitable, especially in the financial business. It's called KYC. Geez, what does this sound similar to? It sounds similar to when we started. Mr. and Mrs. Employer, what are the characteristics of your job? Who am I? You're not swindling, you're connecting if there's a match. I need somebody who can jump 15 feet in the air. That's me, but you can only jump 3 feet. You're not suitable. Okay. So we're back to that. So I read sales books. Read, engage people, be interesting, interact, connect, not for a motive of gain, but unavoidably you create conditions under which something good can happen. Maybe you're a church or a temple person. Maybe you're a museum person. How cool would it be to meet somebody doing it? By the way, this applies to people who are single who want to meet a guy or a girl too. But how cool would it be to pursue an activity that you like? And while you're doing that, you happen to meet somebody who maybe, wow, I've gotten to know you over the last few weeks because we go to the same book reading club or museum, or we play the same flag football, or, whatever we do. Wow, you're looking for a job? And you know what I mean? So you position yourself. When you get hired, within your tolerance, seek out additional duties that are meaningful to you, but it gets you more known. It gets people to know you. And because you're going to work really hard, it gets people to know you in a positive way. You learn and you grow. Okay. I've already told you, the funny thing about the military is, if you're a religious person and you're a priest or a rabbi, you're serving your maker. You're serving who you worship. If you're in the service, you're serving the United States of America, which we all love. In business, you are here to make money and to advance. Not like a nasty person, steal, take, but you're allowed to succeed. You're allowed to get a bonus. You're allowed to get promoted above faster than your peers. You're allowed to be the number one salesman 9 times. That's okay. In fact, actually, it's pretty good. Okay. So be relentless, be ambitious. In the civilian world, there's a meritocracy. You're allowed to get promoted, and there's no constraint. You can go boom, boom, boom as fast as you want. By the way, that governs the kind of job you pursue too, because some are more time frame. Okay, you can't get promoted before 3 years. If you happen to go to a trading floor like I did, in my 4th year, I was number 1. There's people been there 15 years. I crushed them. Not like in your face. I just outproduced them. And then people say, oh, Dave, this and that. Let's talk about the Giants. And I was like, I was really nice, but I don't want to be on. I got up at 4:05 in the morning when I sold. I exercised. I got to the desk first. Some people weren't even awake. I took phone calls from Asia. I made phone calls to Asia. I did business in Europe. And I went out with my customers almost every night. I did both ends of the candle because well, first of all, I was in such a hole. But keep that attitude that you have from the service where, you're working real hard, you're ambitious, and maybe you can go, 3/4 speed instead of full speed, but like go as hard as you and your family, your wife, your husband, your family, go as hard as you can, because you can always tap the brakes. And if you don't want money, I suggest you make the money and give it to charity, or give it to the church, or give it to the temple, or give it to your family, or give it to your friends. You can always tap on the brakes, but get that trajectory, take that can-do attitude you learn in service. Be a leader, even if you're not the leader, even if you're not the manager, because you know how to do it. They might not know how to do it, and you're not trying to one-up them, but this is a differentiation. You focus on people, you care. If somebody looks like they're having a rotten day, ask them why. Maybe their mom is sick or something. And you're not Sister Teresa, sister, you're not whatever you are, like you're the ultimate, come sit with me, I'm trained in counseling, but like be a human. Some civilians aren't trained like that. We're trained like that. We're trained as team members and as leaders. If you feel like it, volunteer. I'm volunteering right now, and I don't want anyone to thank me. I'm doing it because I can. It's like that movie Seabiscuit. He goes, why do you fix the horse? He goes, because I can. If it fits you, volunteer. You might actually get something back. You might actually get rewarded and feel good and be a good human. And maybe people will see a side of you. And like I told you, I teach kids who come from less advantaged backgrounds. I don't want recognition. I don't want money. I don't want anything. I just kind of want to help and make the world a better place. And there's things I don't do, but those are the things I do. If you can do it, do it. One of my phrases, well, the bad word, prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Create conditions under which something good can happen. Do the things that should be done when they should be done without being asked or told to do them. I'll give you one last Palomar bullet, okay? If you can, right now, try to save at least 10% of your take-home pay. And if you can't afford it, make it 5%. We call it paying yourself first. You might be 18. Well, no, not if you were in service. You might be 22. You might be 35. Do it first. When you do your monthly budget, put the money away in the future before you go out to the movies, before you buy the expensive bottle of wine or whatever it is you do with your money. The first thing on your monthly budget is to donate to yourself, to save, because I have been at JP. I'm a managing director at JP Morgan, 26 years. I do not have a pension. I do not have health care if I retire. Very, very few companies have any kind of health care retirement benefits these days. And I'm in pretty good shape. My mom died at 94. My father died at 90. There's a pretty good chance I'm going to go to 100. I have to self-fund my retirement. You do too. So please, please save your money. It's less important where you put it. I suggest you don't gamble. Maybe, we're not going to talk about that because that's a conversation. That's not a recommendation. Anybody who tells you to buy this or buy that, don't listen to them. They have to know your risk tolerance. They have to go through a discussion of your obligations so you can figure out asset allocation. Just please save 10% of your money or whatever portion you can before you allocate any other expenses in your monthly or semi-monthly check. That is it. My name is Dave Palomar. I tried my best to give you my advice through my experience. I adjust this talk every time I give it. I tried my very best to give you advice. The advice or lessons learned from my miserable failure, because I did very, very poorly when I got out of service because I had no idea where to go. I kind of figured it out and I tried to evaluate those lessons. I hope it helps you. Best of luck to you and thank you again for your service.